Now, I've already talked about people falling behind on their mortgage payments. I've already talked about credit card defaults, and I've talked about auto loan defaults. But here's a little something that you need to pay attention to, because I have a really sad story to report on. And unfortunately, this is happening to more than just this gentleman who is in his 80s and lost everything. It is a predatory practice, and we need to address what you need to watch out for, and also pay attention so that maybe your parents don't get taken victim by one of these scammers. And this is not an illegal scam. This is actually okay with the law. It's just not ethical and not right. Hey, right now I'm walking in Conservatory Park in Manatee County in Bradenton, and I've never been here. I can't believe I've never been in this park. I've been to like every park in our area, and this is interesting. So a little road of discovery here. And by the way, my name is Maciek Zaremba. I am a real estate agent. If you got questions, all my contact info is below. Let's get into it. So just like you and me, probably everyone's largest asset is their home, or the equity in their home, let's say, or the equity in their real estate, right? And I'm gonna talk about a gentleman named Fred and a sad story that happened to him and what's happening out there for these kinds of scams, right? So let's get into it. But basically, this gentleman, Fred, he lost everything that he's worked for because everything was tied up in the value of his home. Fred Meisberger is an 80-year-old veteran, and he got taken by a cold caller, somebody who was calling him because he's elderly. And you know, sometimes these companies prey on the elderly, which is against the law, but it's hard to prove that. He owned a home in the greater Cincinnati area for 27 years, literally 27 years. That's like your whole mortgage is paid for at that point in time. But because he has some sort of financial, troubles, which happens, right? Especially when you're 80, okay, things happen. He ended up getting a call from someone who, can kind of save the day. And the sad part is he's not really sure how it all happened, because, at 80 years old, not everyone understands everything that you're pitching. There's a lot of new ideas out there. And what he got pitched is basically a low ball on the value of his home, which Zillow reports to be $212,000. And he ended up selling his home for $147,500. So that's like a 25% discount. And you got to ask yourself, why would he do that? Well, it came with a little, perk. One of the perks was that he would be able to lease back this property for a low amount, So usually what these people do is they will offer you a certain price, and it's lower than the full, value, because, there's going to be things that some repairs that the property needs and so on. But then they get you with the, hey, listen, but you can live here for free for 6 months or a year or something like that. And, he probably is already living free because he's probably paid off his home in those 27 years of ownership, or has a very small mortgage at, the worst case scenario. And the real problem is that these people will then start raising the rent slowly but surely to the full fair market value. And obviously, an elderly man who's been retired for 15 years probably can't afford it, right? He can't afford the fair market value of the rent. So they get you with the promise of low rent, and then you outlive that. That's kind of what happens. But who is it that's calling like this? And the people are, sometimes they're called flippers, wholesalers, or, investors. And look, I'm an investor, but that doesn't mean that all investors do this kind of crap to people. So what do you have to pay attention to? If you pay attention to those calls that you get, I don't know about you, but I get so many phone calls every single day, and it says spam likely on my iPhone, and it's the people that are trying to see if I'm interested in selling my home. Now, they don't know I'm a real estate agent for some reason, and that I would never sell it directly to a wholesaler. I would go expose it to the fair, full market, of buyers. So they don't get me, but I know they get people. And they call and just say, hey, I'm just wondering if you're interested in selling your home. And people are like, I don't know, maybe. How much? And they're like, well, you know, cash offer, quick closing, no inspections, no repairs. You know, they got their spiel. And these are usually wholesalers. Sometimes they're flippers. And what they do is they lock up the contract, and then sometimes they have funding behind them where they actually acquire the property. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they sell that contract to somebody else. So, you know, maybe if you're like around my age, I'm 45, and you have parents that might be in their 70s or something, maybe talk to them about this scam that's happening. Maybe do something to, you know, see if you can add yourself as like a 1% ownership interest on the deed, so that they can't sell it without your signature or something like that. There are ways to protect the assets. Go talk to an attorney who's, you know, basically an estate attorney who can help you figure it out. I even have an attorney that could probably just talk to you. He's not an estate attorney, he's my real estate attorney, but he can, you know, draft simple paperwork for you, probably for pretty cheap. So let me know if you want that number. His name is Reed McCullough. So the promise is that, hey, you're going to have low rent for years to come. But then they jack it up. They, you know, in writing is different than what they say verbally. And this is big problem. But then there's the guys who are just wholesalers. And look, I'm not saying wholesaling is always bad. It's not. It solves a problem for people who need to get out of a problem quick, okay? And I understand that sometimes people need to sell, and they were willing to give up a bunch of their equity in order to do that. Cool. Fine, that's okay. As long as it's all clear and out in the open, then do it, okay? But when you don't have your attorney look over the paperwork prior to signing, when you don't read it yourself, that's an even bigger red flag, right? That's really where the problems happen, because they're going to try to convince you of something that you have no idea that they're doing, okay? Because it's on like page 14 of the contract, right? Which brings me to the desperation that's happening right now. So out there are so many people that are starting to fall behind on their car payment and their credit card payment. They're still keeping their mortgage afloat. Now, this is a precursor, right? When people start defaulting on their revolving credit, and then their vehicle, first credit cards, then vehicle, and then their home. That's kind of the order that people tend to, you know, start falling into trouble. So if you start seeing your parents maybe fall into credit card debt and stop paying, you know, help them out. See what can be done. Now, old folks usually don't need credit card, so not paying back that debt is a lot less serious for them than somebody my age who might need to still use credit in their life. Now, automobile, yeah, most people need auto loans, okay? And not everyone. Usually the older you get, the less probability you have that you have an auto loan. But if you start seeing your parents start defaulting on their auto loan, now that's like a big red, if not orange flag. And then come the delinquency on the mortgage. And this is where they get put on a list, and that list gets bought by these people. Whether there's these investors that can say, hey, I see you're falling behind. I'm going to get you all caught up on your payments, and you can live here for 6 months or 2 years or whatever it is for, you know, half of the actual rent that it should be. Well, that's when it's a problem. And they say, we're going to close and you're going to get paid. Okay, so this gentleman, he got $147,500, right? I don't know how much went in his pocket because there's some taxes and so on, but let's just say it was close to that full amount, 140. Well, let's go into this article and see what he did and how he ended up in trouble. What he ended up signing was called a sale leaseback. And this is something to pay attention. It's like a keyword that you need to pay attention to. And in his situation, he ended up selling it. He paid off some lawyers, he paid off some credit card debt, and now at 80 years old ended up being homeless because he couldn't afford the increase in payments that this new owner, the investment company, ended up raising it to. And even if it's not full market value, that's not the point. The point is preying on an 80-year-old man who is now homeless, by the way. He is homeless living behind a laundromat. And look, some sale leaseback companies are creating predatory leases and purchase agreements, and some of them are truly predatory, meaning they are actually buying lists of people who have owned their home over like 20 years, and maybe they are over X amount of years old, let's just say 70, and then they also have no mortgage debt on that property, or they have a very small mortgage balance on that property, and they have a certain amount of credit card debt. You know, you can buy these lists that kind of goes into all very specifics, and you know, the more criteria you add, the less people you have that you can call. But if you do this on a national basis, you can start calling these people and trying to buy their home from them. And this is what large companies are doing. This is basically an exploitation of house rich, cash poor people, because those are the people that don't have any cash and they need the money. So they're like kind of open to like, oh wow, let me look into this, right? In fact, there was a company called Easy Knock, and they ended up getting in trouble in Massachusetts. You know, they kind of did it wrong. They ended up going and specifically, you know, calling elderly folks. So that's very predatory like. And what ended up happening is that they, you know, got in trouble. They got sued, and they ended up settling out of court. So they denied all allegations, and then they settled out of court for $200,000. But let me tell you this, some deals they get are over $200,000 in equity, instant equity. So maybe that might be like 3 deals, 4 deals if they do like 50,000 each. Crazy. Like in this gentleman's example, he, you know, that was over $60,000 in equity immediately that company got. So unfortunately, watch out for this. Not all wholesalers are bad, not all flippers are bad, but when they're really attacking, you know, people who are very vulnerable, you know, where's that moral compass? That's the problem with it. We're already going through this situation where people don't have money and they need to like do something to make money, and tapping into your equity is an easy way to do it. Unfortunately, the tapping into equity by giving away your home is a bad idea, and home equity lines of credit are another thing that you could do, but that's also a bad idea, especially when the economy is looking like it's gonna suffer a little bit more before things get better, and maybe we might go into a war. And I mean, I don't know, we got nuclear tankers by Cuba right now. This is just not looking too good. But don't give away your equity to some random company that overpromises and under-delivers. And the only way you can really protect yourself about that is to have your attorney read everything over before you get into the agreement itself. Let me show you. This is why I love living in Florida. Look at this. This is my daily life, and it could be yours too. Look at it. I love it.